Freakin blah. What's going on, guys? Eric, blah, freaking blah. Thank you for joining me. It's good to see you. Good for you to be here. So today we're back with a proper podcast. We've been doing topical videos the past few days. I actually had one done last night. I spent well over an hour talking about the topic of Axel Alonso. And you're not going to see it, and the reason you're not going to see it was awful. It was so awful. I mean, you try to drop the golden egg every single time, and sometimes it's just a turd that comes out. You just can't help it. It's life. And the day job basically has me working out in the 90-degree heat all day long past few days, and I am fried. I'm just fried. And it was all I could do. And, man, I just wanted to cover this article that I found from a year ago and cover some topics. And I just went off on a tangent. This really embarrassing rant. It was almost incomprehensible. So I tried to do some editing magic to it to try to make it cohesive. It just wasn't happening. It just sucked. And I try to give you guys as good a quality as I can. I don't want to give you crap or fluff or whatever. I'd really try to bring you quality. So that's why there was no video yesterday. So today we're back to the regular podcasting routine here, and today, unfortunately, I have to start off with some sad news. Joan Lee, wife of Stan Lee, has died, and she was 93 years old. This came courtesy of the HollywoodReporter.com. It says the pair who met when the Marvel boss was supposed to take her friend on a date were married for 69 years. So they confirm that she has passed away, and they're asking for privacy, and God willing that they'll get it. It says the former British hat model and Lee were married on December 5th, 1947. Married for 69 years, guys. I mean, wow. And were by all accounts hopelessly devoted to each other. They had 2 children, J.C., who was born in 1950, and Jan, who died 3 days after her birth in 1953. Oh, I didn't know that. And this goes on to kind of where Stan Lee had done an interview describing how he'd met her. And he says, when I was young, there was one girl I drew. One body and face and hair. It was my idea of what a girl should be, the perfect woman. And when I got out of the Army, somebody, a cousin of mine, knew a model, a hat model at a place called Leyden Hats. He said, Stan, there's this really pretty girl named Betty. I think you'd like her. She might like you. Why don't you go over and ask her to lunch, blah, blah, blah. He's like, so I went up to this place. Betty didn't answer the door, but Joan answered, and she was the head model. I took one look at her, and she was the girl I'd been drawing all my life. And then I heard the English accent, and I'm a nut for English accents. She said, may I help you? And I took a look at her, and I think I said something crazy like, I love you. He says, I don't remember exactly. But anyway, I took her to lunch. I never met Betty, the other girl. I think I proposed to Joan at lunch, which is just fantastic and sweet. And maybe, maybe we've just seen a little bit of inspiration for MJ. The whole opening the door and the tiger, I think he just hit the jackpot line. Maybe that was a little bit of that was based on this. So they go on, talks about how they were married, and the funny thing is this is just really a dream relationships. You marry a spouse that doesn't let you give up. I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Stephen King threw his manuscript for Carrie in the trash when he was writing it in the 70s. And it was his wife that pulled the manuscript out of the trash out of curiosity and read it. And she was the one that told him, I think you need to finish this. I think this is something special, because he just was frustrated and sick of it. And, of course, he was an English teacher at that point. And had it not been for his wife, he might basically be a retired English teacher instead of what he became. That says here, let's see. Sorry, I lost it. Hang on a second. Okay, so in some versions of the origin of the Fantastic Four, Lee credits Joan with inspiring him. He was depressed about his career. Lee had dreams of becoming a serious novelist, and the state of comics. The industry in the 1950s was dominated by stories of war, science fiction, and romance, genres he didn't like, and contemplated leaving the business. Before you quit, Joan told him, "Why don't you write one comic you are proud of?" And thus was born the Fantastic Four, which is pretty sweet. So, Stan, we love you. Our hearts are with you. Our thoughts are with you. Our prayers are with you. I can't imagine, how hard of a time he's going through right now. So, well wishes to Stan Lee, and, I don't know. That's just all I can say about that. I just wish him the best. I've been married for 17 years, and, life, that long of a life with someone and then they're gone, is incomprehensible. So we wish you the best, Stan. So when we come back, we'll continue talking a little bit about Marvel, because I have a confirmation now for something. If you've been listening to some of my videos, something I've been suspecting. We'll get to that when you come back. All right, guys, welcome back to the program. Kicking this one off is an article from Polygon titled, "Marvel Boss Calls Avengers 4 the Conclusion to 22-Movie Arc Homecoming Sequel to Mark New Period." Now, I've been speculating for a while now. I think this is kind of where I started at. My very first Marvel video, I believe, I was postulating that Infinity War was going to be the end of the storyline that's going on, the interwoven storyline, and that it's a very good possibility that what has been being established at Marvel Comics, and it's kind of been confirmed in various places, not official, but various places that are pretty trustworthy, that the directives they're getting and the characters they're being told to push are coming from on high. And it's coming from, I think, high. My personal thing is I think that they're coming higher than Axel Alonso, who is the editor-in-chief, but they are being filtered through him and Tom Brevoort and the like into the SJW warriors that they have become the past few years. So it says, the sequel to Spider-Man: Homecoming will kickstart a new chapter for the Marvel Cinematic Universe after the events of Avengers 4. Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige confirmed. Feige told the Toronto Sun that Avengers 4, which currently does not have a working title, would be the last installment in the current MCU. After that movie, Feige explained, the sequel to Spider-Man: Homecoming will represent a new period for Marvel. It will help to kickstart a new MCU future with new superheroes for audience to get to know. And this, it's a very, very good chance that my gut feeling was correct. I kind of hope not, because there seems like there's such a treasure trove of characters that they haven't dug into yet. But like I said, the introduction of Captain Marvel and her film coming out and her being in the Avengers just leads me to believe that this is the direction that we're going. He says the original 22-movie arc ends with the untitled Avengers in May of 2019, and then 2 months later it will be Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Wow, 2 months later after that. I didn't realize that those movies were that close. That usher us into the aftermath and how things proceed from there. So the writer goes on to ask, what does this really mean, though? Despite Feige using the term end, Avengers 4 won't mark the conclusion of a canonical, I hate that word, never know how to pronounce it right, universe. This seems like a logistical decision more than anything else. The contracts for Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Scarlett Johansson, Jeremy Renner, and Chris Hemsworth are coming to an end. Oh. Certain actors like Hemsworth, Renner, and Downey Jr. have all expressed an interest in leaving the series at some point, with the latter most recently admitting that he wanted to end his time in the MCU without any kind of major embarrassment, which we talked about in a video this past week. So it goes on to quote from that article, from that interview that I discussed with you guys about how he wants to hang it up before it gets embarrassing, Robert Downey Jr. The sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming will usher in a new period for Marvel, allowing the studio to focus on newer characters just making their debuts. Ooh. Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, and Black Panther all seem to be strong bets for the company, and they will likely continue into the fourth phase of the MCU. Now, I want to go on record saying that I hope Winter Soldier, if they have to replace Captain America, I would love to see Bucky as Captain America. He seems to me really the only logical choice. Nothing against Falcon, but he just doesn't seem to have the same qualifications as Captain America as far as filling that mantle. I always felt he was kind of shoehorned in there, and I like the character. And in all fairness, I never did read the books where he was Captain America. It just didn't interest me. I just got kind of this feeling about it. I was like, nah, if I'm wrong, let me know. If you really think that I should check that out, let me know. Because I'm open to anything. If I've misread it, that's cool. But the Winter Soldier storyline, and then subsequently later, after the death of Captain America in the comic books, Bucky taking up the mantle, seemed to fit really well. And seeing as how he has the same type of strengths and, somewhat of a similar upbringing as Steve Rogers, I see that working a lot better. The question that obviously comes to mind is, in Avengers Infinity War, are we going to see a bunch of people die? That's like the question hanging. Are we going to see characters just die? I don't know. I don't really have any feelings on this. It's possible. It's possible given the way, it really depends on how these contract talks go. Because like I postulated in the last video talking about Robert Downey Jr. spitting this out in an interview, he's probably in negotiations now. Because it's very common. It's a common practice for, actors, actresses to go, they kind of hem and haw in an interview where they know it's going to get back to the studio. Try to get them to panic, try to move that needle in their favor. In the negotiations, like, okay, don't quit. Look, we'll pay you this. We'll pay you this. Just come back. Just don't talk like that anymore. Make us nervous. So let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Do you think this is going to mean deaths? I mean, again, it really depends on the contract negotiations. But do you think Black Widow and Hawkeye, they're all really great characters, but they are the kind of the lesser tag-along characters in these films. Nothing against them. It's just they don't have their own movies, or, War Machine was kind of sidelined in Civil War. How much will we see of him, in the upcoming film? I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, and also let me know what characters you'd like to see take over, because there's a good chance it's going to be the ones you're probably worried about. Now, is it possible that Marvel could do them in such a way that it is not the catastrophe that the current story, the current characters are? It's possible. But I personally would like to see more established classic characters get their time in the cinematic sun than these newer kind of shoehorned characters. But I guarantee guys like Bendis are fighting to get their characters in the cinematic universe because, like I said, they want that money. They want that cinema money. And I don't personally blame them. But let me know. Let me know who you'd like to see rise up in Phase 4, because it sounds to me like there's going to be a lot of changes. All right. Next up, you know what? I want to talk about the Transformers. When we come back, we're going to talk how to fix the Transformers franchise. Stay tuned. All right, guys. Blah freaking blah. So, I've not seen Transformers 5 yet. The last night. I've not seen it in the theater. And despite all the negative press, and all the negative reviews, and all the negative comments I've seen, I will probably go see it in the theater, if I can. Like I said, day jobs kept me pretty busy, so I might actually miss this one, but I've seen all 4 of the previous ones in the movies, and I tend to be a completist like that. Oh, no, I gotta go see it. I have heard terrible, terrible things, and honestly, the trailers have always kind of looked bad to me. They really have. It's just kind of like, it just looks all over the place, and from what I understand, the movie actually is all over the place. Pardon me while I take a sip. So this comes courtesy of Screen Rant. The funny thing is, this is actually an article. This is a topic that I'd wanted to tackle before, because I love the Transformers. I mean, many of you love the Transformers. You've, like me, you grew up with the Transformers. So it seems a terrible, terrible waste what has happened with the films. It's been a constant frustration, and apparently the box office is really showing it on this one, that people are just tired of the mistreatment of the Transformers. So ScreenRant.com did the hard legwork for me, and they did this article called 15 Ways to Fix the Transformers Movies. So rather than me having to think it through and write it down, I just get to do a glance over of their work. Thank you, Screen Rant. You're awesome. So it starts out, the Transformers movies are at something of an impasse. And that's putting it lightly. While the latest entry, The Last Night, garnered the same brutal reviews that all the other sequels have, this one was met with an unexpected twist. Weak box office results. And guys, it has been surprisingly weak. I mean, way, way lower than even Age of Extinction was. Which I didn't hate near as much as a lot of people, honestly. But it says, indeed, depending on the international box office, the franchise's future is in genuine peril for the first time since Michael Bay first adopted the robots in disguise in 2007. This can obviously be traced to a certain level of fatigue with the franchise. 5 films in 10 years is a lot, and it is. Pirates of the Caribbean is suffering a similar fate. But it can also be traced directly to what all those critics have been saying all these years. These are not good movies. Aha, but, truth be told, good is subjective. But we'll get to that maybe. It really doesn't have to be like this. The Transformers franchise has a 30-year well of stories from comics and animation to pull from, and there is genuinely great stuff in there, and there is. Like the 90s cartoon Beast Wars? No. And the current IDW comics. The producers just need to figure out what has made the Transformers so appealing for over 3 decades and make some hard choices about the future of the movies. I'm sorry, let me sidetrack this. I did not like Beast Wars. Now, I guess it just came along. It came along at the wrong time for me, because I was raised on Generation 1. I saw the animated film in the theater twice. I loved it. I bought it on VHS when it came out, and that was a big deal because I was just a kid and I saved up all my Christmas money, and in those days, the VHS went to the rental store first, and you had to wait 6 months before it was available for retail. They had a 6-month window to let the video stores get the rentals out of it, and then they started selling it to the public. And I couldn't wait 6 months. I had to buy one then, and I spent $90 on it. $90. And did not regret it one iota. I watched that tape, God, 150. I don't have it anymore because I think I basically watched it until it died. Thank God for Blu-ray. All right. So here, 15 ways to fix the Transformers movies. Let me know what you agree with and if there's anything that you don't. Number 15. It's the first one listed. It's number 15. It really ought to be number 1. Say goodbye to Michael Bay. Ooh, I can hear the cheers from here. The most obvious problem with the current state of the Transformers movies is that they've become a brash, bombastic manifestation of Michael Bay's unbridled id. Say that 5 times really fast. There's no denying the polarizing director is blessed with a singular visual. There's perhaps no one who makes mass destruction and excess look more appealing than the man behind cult classics like The Rock and Bad Boys. Well, they're not just cult classics, they're legitimate hits. But Bay's worst habits have slowly overwhelmed the Transformers movies. The first Transformers film was not perfect, but it told a story. The sequels have developed into a haphazard collection of gigantic set pieces and explosions that don't have anything to say about the characters or their world. At this point, it would be best for both Bay and the studio to part ways. See, my thought here is Bay doesn't care anymore. Okay. Number one, the first movie he was perfect for. And I'm going to say this, I say this with a straight face. Because I don't think anyone could have made that film the way Bay made it. Made the Transformers big and exciting and appealed to a mass audience. and frankly, walk ILM through, yes, Optimus Prime has to have 10,000 animated moving parts. I mean, seriously, there's not a lot of people that would have gotten that out of that company. I think Bay was one of the, if not the most perfect choice for that film. He was one of the best choices for the Transformers. Part 2, Part 2 was a complete mess. But if you do a little research, grab your Google search bar and type in the writer's strike for 2000, what year was that? 2008, I think. The writer's strike ruined a ton of films that came out the next year. Transformers 2 was one of them. So basically, if you're wondering why that was such a mishmash, and rather than have story points, you had shots of robots humping Megan Fox's leg and those two idiot Transformers that Ratchet and Clank. I can't remember their names right now. It's kind of blanked from my memory. I've just burned it out of the hard drive, as it were. It's not all Bay's fault. Now that stupid, dumb humor, that is his fault. I think that's why he just threw in there in the empty page that was there. Let's just do this, because you had to keep moving. He had a deadline. So it's just unfortunate circumstances that ruined 2. That's why 3 was a bit better. And I personally think that Bay, I don't think he cares anymore. I think that's why this one was so bad. Is I don't think there's any energy in him left to do these films. And you have to ask, well, why does he do them? Well, it's easy. It's money. And that's not a bad thing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, think about it. Like, you work your job, and if somebody comes to you and offers you 3 times what you make now to do the same job, would you say no? Of course you wouldn't. You'd say yes. Or if these guys said, you know what? We want you to come over here and work for us, and we'll give you a bag of money, and we will give you starter capital to start your own business that you've always wanted to start, i.e. the passion projects that a lot of filmmakers want to do. They'll bundle it. You have to go do the studio film, but then the studio will finance your independent project, your passion project, and that's how you get it paid for. So, and that was true for Pain and Gain, I believe, and maybe 13 Hours, where he does the big movies, but he's like, okay, I'll do this big movie, but you have to agree to do these little projects of mine, So there's that. I mean, I really do like Michael Bay. I respect, his work. The Transformers is a mess for a lot more reasons than we can really go into, but I am glad to see him leave it. I do agree that he should, and I look forward to what he's going to do next. So number 14, do a hard reboot. Yes, before I read a word, yes, 1,000 times yes, start over. The article says virtually everyone cringes at the idea of a reboot these days. It can be perceived as a cynical move for a desperate franchise that has run out of fresh ideas. That's actually not really the reason the Transformers film should reboot. Indeed, the 5 existing movies barely had any coherent ideas to start with. That's a compelling argument. They have, however, slaughtered the overwhelming majority of iconic characters in the series. often in completely undignified ways, also a good point, leaving the robot cast of Optimus, Bumblebee, Megatron, who I thought was Galvatron but apparently is Megatron again, and a bunch of thinly drawn D-listers. And ones he just made up. You've got a whole line of 5 Dinobots. He puts 3 familiar ones and just makes up the other ones. Why? Because Bay. The movies have also built up a world where the mythology is so murky and contradictory that it really would just be better to start from scratch with a cleaner, creative vision. Yes, if Transformers is going to rebound, it needs to be free of the baggage of the Bay movies. Completely agree. No edit thoughts. Next, number 13. Set them in the 1980s. Okay, this is literally one that I've never thought of, but it could work. Let's go into it. If the Transformers series is going to reboot itself, it needs an angle to differentiate itself from the Bay movies both tonally and aesthetically. Okay, you don't need to change time periods to do that. It wouldn't take a lot to change the tone and the aesthetics. One of the easiest ways to do that would be to go back to the franchise's roots. There have been great Transformer stories told in many different time periods, from prehistoric times to sci-fi flavored futures. Sorry, I don't know why that was such a mouthful. And the most enduring iteration of the franchise is the original iconic Generation 1. Yes, which owes more than a little of its style and heart to its genesis in the 1980s. One of Generation 1's strengths was its lack of moral ambiguity. Yes, the Autobots were virtuous to a fault, with Optimus Prime coming off more like Superman than the bizarre, violent lunatic of the Bay movies. The recent X-Men movies have shown big genre franchises can make great use of the trappings of a period piece. Imagine Jazz blasting 80s hair metal classics as he ferries around a mulleted Spike a mulleted Spike Witwicky, and try not to smile. I couldn't read it without laughing. So that image aside, that could actually be all right. The hair metal blasting out of jet. I'm down with that. But if we want to get the classic character look, that might be the way to get it. That makes sense because to set it in the 80s, if we want to get the classic looks, it might be best to set it in the 80s. Oh, which leads us to number 12. Embrace the classic character designs. With the possible exceptions of Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, it would be difficult to pick a Bay movie Transformer out of a lineup. Colorless, faceless, overly complicated designs have been the trademark of the Bay-directed Transformers movies. The designs are so poorly considered it's often difficult to tell what in the world is happening in the myriad robot battle scenes, which often seem like big metallic dust clouds. Yeah, agreed. Despite Bay's reluctance to embrace them, the original generation designs are much sleeker and iconic. They look like mechanical superheroes rather than gruesome alien behemoths. The designs have also shown that they can be tweaked and adapted for the modern media world in countless comics and television shows. Added color and clarity is something the Transformers movies are in desperate need of. I completely agree with this. Again, I want to see, like many of you guys, we want to see the Transformers look like the Transformers. And the article is going to get into this, but I had a revelation about Michael Bay's Transformers films, and I think I might have even talked about this when I did the trailer review for the latest movie. You can, if you look through my trailer talk, it's in there. Is that just one day I just kind of realized that the reason why Michael Bay's films feel wrong is because they're not Transformers films. The movies are about people reacting to Transformers. In other words, they're reacting to giant alien robots. That's what the movies are about. People's reactions to aliens. So that's why it doesn't matter what the Transformers look like. It's not the point. The point is humans dealing with basically an alien invasion. And that's always been the case. And I think the reason for that is because Michael Bay understands big and he understands spectacle, and he understands people and people's reaction to spectacle. You know, which you've seen in The Rock and you've seen in Bad Boys. But what he doesn't understand, unfortunately, is Transformers. The characters. He doesn't get them at all. That's why you can have Optimus Prime in the last film going, "Join us or die." That's a Megatron line. The whole audience goes, "What?" Oh, you know, I mean, when that happens. And that's just Michael Bay not getting it. And of course, it can be argued not caring much at that point either. So the article goes on to say there's a decent chance that if you think about your dozen or so least favorite moments in the Transformers movies, they don't even revolve around a robot in disguise. Skids and Mudflap accepted. Okay, Skids and Mudflap, that's right. The vast majority of dumb, endless diversions in the Bay movies revolve around the human characters who somehow come off more cartoonish and manic than the giant CGI robots. And, you know, to Bay's credit, he lets his actors cut up. It's clear, every film he's done, you get this point where you just get to do whatever you want, have fun. I think that's why Anthony Hopkins did it. I mean, what other opportunity are you going to have to just goof around and say dude on a $250 million project and get a massive bag of money to do it? It actually sounds like fun. It might not be, but the article goes on to say that the Transformers have somehow ended up as background characters in their own movies is baffling. So that's what I just talked about. See, I'd had this all worked out in my head, and like I said, this article makes a great framework for it. There's plenty of precedent for live-action movies where the main characters are motion capture or CGI creations. We've long moved past the era where there are technical limitations that require us to spend 2 hours with Sam Witwicky. Let the actual Autobots and Decepticons propel their own movies. Amen. Now the next point in the article is to get off of Earth. And I would like to see that, but at the same time, I fear that would lose audiences. So it's like one of those things where you don't want to begrudge it. Like, I would love to be. I'm open to the idea of parts of the movie taking place off-world, you know, taking place in space. But I think that to do an entire film somewhere else would probably be a mistake. It might make it too sci-fi. So the article goes on to say, Transformers is traditionally an epic story about warring alien robot factions who battle across the universe in a quest for resources to gain control of their home planet Cybertron. Earth is essentially a pit stop in a much wider conflict. The movie should embrace the idea that the fight between the Autobots and Decepticons is a galaxy-spanning conflict that's been waged for millions of years. I would like to see that. Exploring non-Earth stories would be a great way to open up the movies to new genres and different kinds of stories. IDW's recent Transformers comics have shown how this can be done to great success. The Last Stand of the Wreckers, which is a great book if comic book readers, IDW's Transformers is without a doubt great reads. The Last Stand of the Wreckers tells a harrowing, horror-tinged tale of an Autobot penal colony overrun by Overlord, a particularly nightmarish Decepticon, and the critically hailed Transformers Lost Light tells a sprawling story of a group of second-string Autobots searching for purpose in the universe after the Autobot-Decepticon war ends. Number 9 says, make Starscream a major player. Major player. Yes. I mean, Bay just missed that one entirely. If he understood he didn't understand the Transformers as characters. That was always the downfall. One of the most egregious crimes committed by the Michael Bay Transformers movies is the treatment of Starscream. I would argue Shockwave was worse, as was Soundwave, but Starscream was bad. Starscream was at least in 3 films. You know. Soundwave and Shockwave, such a waste. Oh! Don't get me started on Devastator. Ooh, this is a debatable point. This is a debatable point, but we'll just keep it here for now. Starscream is one of the greatest backstabbing cockroaches in all of fiction, but the films reduced him to another personality-free, monstrous lackey. He was so underdeveloped that no one particularly cared when he died an embarrassingly pointless death at the hands of Sam Witwicky in Dark of the Moon. It was a well-done death. It was very technical. Starscream deserves so much better. Not unlike Littlefinger in Game of Thrones, Starscream is a self-obsessed survivor who's always looking for the best angle to ensure his rise to power. He's traditionally a much more interesting villain than Megatron. It depends on what source you're reading out of, because he's a scheming coward who always manages to slither his way out of his leader's wrath or his fellow Decepticons' disgust. He's a wild card, and the movies would be smart to more fully embrace him. Now, I'll stop right here. There is something about the IDW books that stands out enormously to me. And I think it started with All Hail Megatron. And in that story, All Hail Megatron, Megatron was basically taking over the Earth. And IDW has decided to write Starscream. He's still this, but write him much more competent and much more of a rich character. I mean, he is all these things still, but there was one point where like he's standing beside Megatron, and Megatron basically tells him that the Decepticons will be his one day. It was almost like this father-son conversation, and Starscream was like looking at him all like taken aback. He's like, and Megatron basically is admitting to him that it's always been his dream that Starscream would one day take up the mantle, and he's just kind of saying he's not ready yet for it. But if he would just apply himself, he could be. It was just really stood out to me because the Transformers comics now have legitimate character moments. Okay. Number 8 is move away from the disaster movie tropes. You know, basically saying that you don't have to destroy an entire city or the planet in the third act. I mean, it's kind of what you do now, but I don't know. You know, Transformers having a battle, it causes mass destructions. You could make it smaller. I'm not against that, just as long as the story makes sense. So, number 7, tell stories that make basic narrative sense. This being the one that you think would be a given. It is nearly impossible to sum up one of the Transformers sequels in a couple of sentences or less. They have somehow mastered the dark art of throwing in so many incomprehensible plot points that it often seems like nothing is happening at all. They're a mishmash of lazy writing that lack even the most basic storytelling structure. This is inexcusable for a franchise that has a rich 33-year history of stories to pull from. I agree. The Bay movies have pulled from these stories in the past, and they have, but with incredibly poor results, and they were often missing the basic points of the stories. A new creative team would be smart to streamline the storytelling rather than throwing dozens of ideas against the wall hoping one of them sticks, or all of them stick at once. So tell a story that actually tells a story. Make the Autobots less sadistic. They touched on this earlier, and I completely agree with this sentiment, but it says the general idea of the Transformers mythos is that the Autobots are the good guys. Right? When did this become so... See, I blame moral relativism for this crap. Just some writers don't understand the concept of people being the good guys, but they are legitimately the good guys. That might seem like an obvious sentiment, but it's one the Bay movies have lost sight of on more than one occasion. And not just here, guys. In the third film, Dark of the Moon, Optimus Prime and the Autobots fake their own deaths in the face of growing sentiment among humanity that they're no better than the Decepticons. This results in the Decepticons overrunning Chicago and causing countless human deaths. The Autobots return just in time to stop planetary destruction, but it was a cold, morally indefensible lesson Optimus was doling out to the planet he claims to love so much. Bay's Autobots tend to be surly, violent jerks in general. Yeah, pretty much. The movies need to embrace the idea of the Autobots as reluctant warriors who are at heart explorers and scientists, and we could argue even artists, let's throw some artists in there, that wish to understand their new world, not just spit at it. Nothing to add there. Move away from the toilet humor. Oh, come on. Gotta have a little toilet humor. What about a Transformer that actually turns into a toilet? There's nothing wrong with levity. That was me, not the author. There's nothing wrong with levity in Transformers stories. The franchise Luminary Beast Wars. Oh, don't reference Beast Wars. Granted, they did have a couple funny lines. The franchise Luminary Beast Wars was always happy to indulge in Looney Tunes style slapstick hijinks, and IDW's Lost Light has honed its droll, extremely British sense of humor into a finely tuned weapon. That is absolutely true. The problem is the Transformers movies have for too long been defined by Bay's sense of humor. Bay freely admits he makes these movies for teenage boys, but it's a little alarming that he seemingly shares their idea of what's funny. Jokes about masturbation, bodily functions reign supreme, and sometimes end up devolving into endless digressions that sidetrack whatever momentum the movie may have built up. Transformers movies are never going to be Shakespeare, but they could do with adopting a modicum of class. Yes. Is there anything that you guys don't agree with yet? So far, there's... Yeah. Okay, number 4, ditch the no-voice gimmick for Bumblebee. God, yes, please. I'm not even going to read into that one. That one just is done. Make Megatron a more nuanced character. This kind of ties into the Starscream thing to me. Stop, and all of them in general. Don't waste again, Bay just didn't get it. I'll read this because it's worthy of mentioning. The Megatron is a big fat nothing in the Bay Transformers movies. He's a personality-free bad guy who exists to set in motion whatever pyrotechnic mayhem Bay wants to pull out of that particular film. Mm-hmm. See, they don't even get into things like Soundwave or Shockwave or, God, Scorponok? Remember that really awesome shot in the first film? Just the Transformer busting out of the sand behind Tyrese et al., and they're all running for their lives in the desert. Wasn't that Scorponok? Am I remembering this wrong? I haven't watched the film in a while. But what a freaking waste. I mean, it's just every single character they put in these movies is just poorly done. Yeah, except really for Bumblebee. But yeah, the voice thing, yeah. Anyway, Hugo Weaving, who is Agent Smith from The Matrix, he voiced Megatron in the first 3 films, was so ambivalent about the role, he infamously said he'd never seen the movies or even met Bay. Megatron has become the worst kind of pointless movie monster. It doesn't have to be this way. There are plenty of nuanced, interesting versions of Megatron. Again, referencing the goddamn Beast Wars. This is the one place of contention with this author I have. The Beast Wars version is a charismatic rogue fueled by his rage at being essentially a second-class citizen because of his heritage. IDW is currently telling perhaps the definitive Megatron story. In a post-war Cybertron where the Decepticons lost, Megatron is left to ponder how he went from a well-intentioned revolutionary to one of history's greatest war criminals. And it's been really compelling so far. There's a well of stories, and there's one spoiler I will not spoil for you. I mean, get it spoiled by somebody else. There's a well of stories to pull from to make Megatron a more compelling villain, found a typo, and it would make the movies so much richer. Yes. Untangle the Transformers from human history. Okay, summing up this part of the article, it's getting stupid. Yes, it is. Moving on. And number 1, again tying into the Michael Bay doesn't understand the character's line of thought, make Optimus Prime a hero again. Even though this echoes the sentiment of making the Autobots the good guy, it's kind of redundant. Optimus deserves a little bit of special attention here. So it says, how do we get to this point? Optimus Prime, traditionally akin to some sort of combination of Superman, Captain America, and a very sensible truck, has been portrayed by Michael Bay's films as a cold, murderous jerk. In his moments of clarity, he's devised elaborate schemes that resulted in untold human deaths to make a point. In his more volatile moments, he seems to have an unchecked bloodlust that feels more like Megatron than the leader of the Autobots. Optimus Prime is supposed to be a virtuous superhero. Yep. He's a wise father figure to the other Autobots, a tactically brilliant general, and a student of Earth and its culture. I mean, yeah, this is actually exactly right. He's an unqualified bright spot in a long, dark war, and his descent into violent mania in Bay's movies is arguably their weakest aspect. To make the Transformers work again, the franchise has to fix its heart, and that's Optimus Prime. Whoa! That's really good. That's really, really good. And kudos go to... Hold on just a minute while I get it back to the top. This article is written by Dusty Stowe. Well done, Dusty. There's only 20 comments on this article. Well, I will post this article and the rest of the sourced articles in the description box below, so please feel free to check out any of these for yourself, read through them. I had one more story that I wanted to get to, but I think that's going to be... You know what? Hell with it. Let's go with it. Let's go long, boys. Let's go long, girls. I'm pulling this out of the air here. One more bit of news for you guys. So, I don't know if you're aware, but they're making Top Gun 2. And you may be asking yourself, why? And if you did ask yourself, why? Then you and I have something in common. Because we're both going, why? I don't have a good answer for you. I've not seen Top Gun in I bet 20 years. And this movie has been trying to get off the ground for quite a number of years, actually. And it was rolling pretty well a few years back when Tony Scott, the director, who directed the original and is the brother of Ridley Scott, sadly took his own life. And that obviously derailed the film. And I actually, to see Tony Scott in that kind of, getting in the director's chair for Top Gun 2, I actually was like, okay, I'll go see it. I want to see Tony Scott do Top Gun stuff. But, and I just figured, you know what? There's no interest for this film. There's none. I don't know why this movie is coming out, aside from apparently Tom Cruise is just pushing for it. That's all I can think. You have, I think, to me personally, my gut says we're at the end of the nostalgia wave. There will always be a market for it. Like you and I will always go things that which I don't really even like calling it nostalgia. It's just stuff we liked we didn't stop liking. And that's my opinion of it. Why make it complicated? We liked it before. We still dig it because we're the same person. But Top Gun just doesn't strike me as the movie that everyone wants a sequel to. So I was writing this film off. I'm like, Cruise just wants to do it. I don't know why. They're hoping to catch the nostalgia thing. I don't think it's going to work. Cruise's films aren't making money outside of Mission Impossible. Well, at least not in America. Worldwide, they do okay. But then he goes and picks a director who I really, really like. So this article comes courtesy of popculture.com. It says, earlier this year, Top Gun fans got excited, all 5 of them, when both Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer confirmed they were... See, I didn't even read this part. I didn't know Val Kilmer was coming back. Really? That boy is he's gonna have to do some working out. Anyway, Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer confirmed they were returning for Top Gun 2. I mean, that's cool. I'm glad to see Val Kilmer. I'm glad the boy is going to be in an actual theatrical release for a change. And that the film was actually, finally, happening. If anyone was holding on to a healthy amount of skepticism about this project happening, they are officially free to start having faith. Top Gun 2, a.k.a. Top Gun, Maverick, has now been confirmed for a release date of July 12th, 2019. It's going up against Spider-Man. It's going up against what is probably going to be the second biggest film of that year. Maybe third, depending on, you got Avengers, and then you've got Star Wars. So then you got Spider-Man, which will be the launching point of Phase 4. Boys, y'all might want to move that out of that date slot. But anyway, okay. So let's just leave that where it's at. That's a really bad idea, that date. As Deadline reports, the rumored director for the project is none other than Tron Legacy and Oblivion's Joseph Kosinski. He has been confirmed to be reteaming with Cruise for this long-awaited sequel. I love Joseph Kosinski. I have loved Tron. I love Tron Legacy. I loved Oblivion, and I have to go see this just because he directed it. I have to. I love the guy's style. I love his voice. Yeah, they got me. They trapped me. If this movie happens, if it actually gets directed by Joseph Kosinski and it gets a theatrical release, I have to go see it. I hope it's good, but I don't know. You guys surprised? But I was very surprised by this and kind of heartbroken because I keep wanting to see Joseph Kosinski's name next to Tron 3. Please, God, Disney, you've only got $85 billion sitting in your bank vault. Make Tron 3. Please, just finish that story. You're driving me crazy. And while you're at it, make another season of the Tron TV show and wrap that one up too. It's a great show. Seriously, guys, if you've not seen the Tron films or the Tron TV show, get those. You know, Disney hasn't even released that on DVD. They just dumped that right down the toilet. They aired it for one season, canceled it, threw it on Netflix and Hulu. I think it's still on Hulu as of this recording. It's not on Netflix, but I think it might still be on Hulu if you guys want to check it out. It's really good. It's smart. Well animated. I mean, the whole thing, it just was deepening the story and getting really rich and sucking you in, and then it was just dead. They just killed it. One of my many contentions with Disney, please make Tron 3. But you know what? I might try to do a video on the Tron thing because I'm really passionate about that. I want to see more of that. But yeah, guys, there you have it. Tron. Sorry, I'm off on Tron now. Top Gun 2 is happening. And it's by Joseph Kosinski, the director, and Val Kilmer. And all of his plastic surgery is going to be in it as well. Am I wrong about this movie? Do any of you actually, are any of you excited about this? I mean, maybe I'm just reading this wrong. Maybe there's like a billion people that are ready to see this film. I don't know. Maybe, but see, what the thing is, with Kosinski, it's a good chance it's going to be good. So I cross my fingers, if he's not going to be working on Tron 3, I want to like whatever it is he's doing. All right, guys, that is it for the day. That has been my hour-long podcast. We're going long here. Thank you. If you're still one of the 5 people listening, God bless you. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate your support. If you're new to the channel and you would like to hang around and hear more videos, please hit the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be alerted when new videos are posted. And if you like this video, please hit the like button. And I'm always eager to hear what you guys have to say, so please sound off in the comments on this video or any video that you watch of mine. I'm always reading through them. I have less and less time lately due to the job to respond to you guys, but I will always try, and you will see me pop up every so often. And like I said, you could post on my god awful movie reviews from a year ago. If I'm talking about a movie that you like or didn't like, or just share your thoughts. I'd love to have you. And like I said, thank you again for joining me, and I hope to see you on the next one. Till then.